Are you a U.S. citizen or permanent resident looking to file for your spouse that's outside of the U.S. for them to come to the U.S. and get their green card? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how to do that. I am U.S. immigration attorney Lillian Chukura, and I help my clients get green cards and citizenships for themselves and their families using the U.S. immigration law system. The first thing you need to know about this process is that it is a two-step process. The first part is with USCIS right here in the US, and the second part is with the embassy where your spouse lives. So let's start with the first step with USCIS. With USCIS, you need to file an I-130 and an I-130A with proof of your relationship. You need to show that you're married, that you're planning on building a life together. All of that is what you show on the I-130 and I-130A stage with USCIS. Now, this is a quick tip on the I-130 form. When you're filling out the I-130 form, make sure that you are putting the embassy where your spouse is going to have their interview. Do not select a USCIS field office. Make sure you are selecting the embassy, because if you do not put in the embassy where the interview is going to take place, they're going to assume that the person is in the US and will be applying for a green card in the US. If USCIS does not send the case directly to the National Visa Center and keeps it because they think your spouse is going to be filing a green card application in the US, they will not then send it back to the National Visa Center unless you file an I-824. So you really want to avoid the extra expense and the extra waiting time. In some countries, a traditional marriage where a dowry is paid is enough for those two people to be considered married. In those situations, that is enough. So if all you have is a traditional wedding, just know you don't have to actually go and do like a full church wedding for you to be able to file for your spouse. Remember, if you have been married before, you need a legal end to the marriage. This includes traditional marriages. So if there was a traditional marriage and then it ended, you need to document how it ended. Once you have your forms and your marriage certificate, any divorce or death certificate for previous marriages, you want to, of course, include birth certificates of your spouse that's outside of the US. If they have a passport, include that, just so USCIS can actually do some background checks. The embassy can get a head start in doing some background checks. Now, once you have those done, those are the required documents. You also want to include proof of your relationship. While you may not have a lot of things that, people that live together in the US may have, like a joint bank account, a lease, a mortgage, all those other things, you have things that you can show. You should have communication between you and your spouse, right? You should have text messages, phone calls, things of that nature. You should be able to show trips that you have taken to see your spouse, pictures of you and your spouse together. If you and your spouse have children together, you should be disclosing that and including birth certificates as proof of the relationship. If you don't have the pictures, you don't have the birth certificate, you don't have kids together, you should at a minimum have proof of your communication. So that's text messages, WhatsApp messages. You're able, for those that don't know, you are able to download your WhatsApp history with a person. So you can print that out and include that. So quick story. I had a client in the past where their case was sent to the embassy. The embassy did an interview, did not feel that the marriage was real, sent it back to USCIS for them to deny and basically revoke the approval of the I-130. Again, this is after the I-130 was already approved. They went to the interview, it was denied, sent back to USCIS. We had to prove to USCIS, no, the embassy is wrong, right? We had to show the USCIS that the embassy was wrong in saying that this marriage is not real. Here's evidence that this marriage is real. And guess what we used? We downloaded all their WhatsApp messages, even from before they got married, showing how they talked about seeing each other, how they talked about getting married, the marriage process. Like, all of that was in their communication. It was over 500 pages of WhatsApp chat. Yeah. Over 500 pages of WhatsApp chat that we put together and sent into USCIS. Because guess what? When you are not able to see your spouse every single day, all you have is the messages to send to each other. All you have is that constant communication. So when you're able to show USCIS, yeah, we don't just text each other or call each other once a month. This is an everyday communication. And if you're trying to tell me this marriage isn't real, here's everything I have. Here's all our messages. And in that case, after USCIS reviewed all of that, they sent the case back to the embassy and kept the I-130 approved. So remember, the embassy wanted them to revoke the I-130 because we were able to show that communication. They said, no, we think this marriage is real and you need to interview this person again, or just go ahead and issue them the visa. So your communication is so important in this process. Do not delete your messages. I know people do this. Do not delete your messages. Back up your messages to Google so that even if you switch your phone, you're still able to get those backups. All right? It's important. Okay? It can end up being the difference between you being approved and your case being denied. If you are finding this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people can get this information as well. Once you file your case with USCIS, you just have to wait for them to approve it. It can take up to a year or more for the I-130 to be approved. Once the I-130 is approved and USCIS sends the file to the National Visa Center, you need to first pay the visa fees. Once you pay the visa and affidavit of support fees, they will open up the actual application for you to then fill out the visa application, the DS-260. They will also open up the place for you to upload the affidavit of support documents, which will be the I-864 and all supporting documents for that. You need to take your time and fill out the DS-260 completely and accurately. This is important because any mistakes on there can cause the embassy to have an issue with your forms. So make sure that you are filling it out correctly and accurately. One of the things that trip people up on the DS-260 is remembering everywhere they have lived since the age of 16. That is one of the requirements of the DS-260. You have to list every single place you have lived since you were 16 years old. If you are part of a family that moved around a lot to different countries, different parts of your country, this is going to get a little difficult. But if you have been living in the same place from the time you were 16 to present, you wouldn't need to really worry about that. But if you have moved around a lot, you want to make sure that you are now listing out everywhere you have lived since you were 16. Once you complete your DS-260, you need to upload the civil documents. The National Visa Center actually helps you with this. They will tell you exactly what documents to upload. If you have lived in multiple countries since you were 16, they may require you to upload police certificates from both countries. So keep an eye on that and be aware that you may need that police certificate depending on how long you lived in those countries. Once you upload all the civil documents, the marriage certificate, the birth certificate, passport, all of those things, you go ahead and upload the affidavit of support. You are not able to fill out the affidavit of support form on the website. You have to fill it out in PDF, print it out, sign it, scan it, and upload it. Once you upload that, make sure you're also uploading your tax returns, pay stubs, things like that to show your income. If your income is not enough and you know this before you submit, you want to make sure that you either have assets that are enough to cover the difference in income, or that you have a joint sponsor and you are uploading the joint sponsor's information as well. Once you have all the documents in there for the civil documents and the affidavit of support, go ahead and submit. Once you submit, it goes to the National Visa Center, where an officer will review and see if there's any documents that they need or that is missing. If they're not missing any documents, they will let you know your case is documentarily qualified. You want to know that because that's the moment that you are now in line for an interview. Before that, you're just filling out forms, you're just waiting. But once they tell you that your case is documentarily qualified, you are now in line for an interview. The National Visa Center will let you know once the embassy schedules your interview. The embassy is the one that schedules the interview, not the National Visa Center. So the National Visa Center is not able to tell you how long it's going to take to get your interview. If there is a humanitarian urgent reason for your case to be sped up, this is the time to go ahead and request an expedite. You can send your expedite request to the embassy through the National Visa Center. You can use the National Visa Center's inquiry form to ask for the expedite. They will then forward it to the right embassy, and then the embassy will make a decision on whether to expedite the case or not. If the embassy decides to expedite the case, they will let you know when the new interview date is, and you will be able to start preparing for that interview. Once you have your interview date, you are almost there. You just have to do a few more things to prepare for the actual interview. Your spouse has to make sure they go and do their medical exam at least 2 weeks before the interview. At least 2 weeks before the interview, they have to do their medical exam and any other follow-ups that they need to do. They have to make sure that they have all the documents for the interview. So the birth certificate, the marriage certificate, the affidavit of support, all of those things. They have to make sure that they have it for their interview. Your spouse has to also prepare for the actual questions they're going to get at the interview. This is where it's important to talk to your spouse and make sure that they review every single form that is filed in your case. Remember, in your I-130 and the affidavit of support, you are given the information to the embassy and USCIS about yourself. And if you have ever filed a U.S. immigration case, there's a file for you at USCIS and that the embassy has access to. So the embassy can ask your spouse questions about you based on what they already know. So for example, the embassy may ask your name, your date of birth, how you two met, where you two met, when you got married, where you work, where you live. They can also ask the last time you two saw each other in person, how often you communicate. They can ask your parents' names, because again, those are in the forms that you sent in. So typically the questions that they're asking is just to confirm the information that they already have, or to see if your spouse can answer basic questions about you as far as what you do for work, where you work, where you live. Once they have the interview and the officer approves them, they have to give the officer their passport and they go home. They wait for the officer to put the visa in the passport, let them know when to pick it up. Once they pick up their packet with their passport and visa, they are now able to travel to the US. When they come to the US, they don't automatically get a green card in the mail. If you want USCIS to actually print your card and mail it to you, you need to pay the USCIS immigrant visa fee. Once you pay the immigrant visa fee, they will process your request and print your card and mail it to you. While you're waiting for that, your spouse that's now a green card holder, their passport with the visa in it is now proof of their status. Although you're waiting for the green card to come in the mail, you still have proof that you are a permanent resident, and that proof is your visa. So please do not lose your passport either, because if you lose your passport, now you don't even have proof of your status. If your marriage is less than 2 years old, please note that you are going to get a 2-year green card. But if it's more than 2 years old, by the time your visa is approved, you are going to get a 10-year card. The difference is whether it was less than 2 years when the visa was approved or more than 2 years when the visa was approved, okay? It doesn't really mean that your case is, different. For most people outside of the US, for example, if you are in Nigeria, where it's taken 2 to 3 years to even get a visa interview, you are not going to get a 2-year card. You're going to get a 10-year card. So depending on how long it's taken for the I-130 to be approved and then for you to get an interview, you're most likely going to end up with a 10-year card and not a 2-year one. However, if you're in a country where they're scheduling interviews within like 6 months or less, you're going to maybe end up with a 2-year card. If you have any questions about this process or what I have discussed in this video, be sure to leave me a comment. And if you would like to know if you qualify to go through an immigration process, or you want to know what the best options are for you, you can do that by going to my website, Lillylegal.com, or call in my office at 508-443-1788 and scheduling a strategy session with me so that I can look at your particular situation and tell you what your options are.